There was a period of 10 years or more when Afghanistan made more headlines than any other country. What comes to mind when you mention Afghanistan? Most likely the Taliban and terrorism, war and bearded Afghans with their ancient traditions. But there are many more facts about Afghanistan. And these stories of Afghans reveal to us a lot of shocking details of that terrible decade, which not everyone wants to remember. Hello, Newsoldier in touch. Let's remember today the facts of that very war, which left unhealed wounds in the memory of many. Today about the most shocking facts of Afghanistan. The Afghan War began in 1979, although in fact it happened already in 1973 and lasted for 10 whole years. Initially the Soviet troops were not going to engage in hostilities, wanting only to support their allies, but then they got involved in the war anyway. Now these events are hushed up as they left an unpleasant imprint on the historical chronicle of Russia, but these are facts and they need to be known, no matter how terrible they are. Fact number 1. Losses. According to the latest data, 15,469 Soviet soldiers died or went missing in Afghanistan, and about 53,750 servicemen were shell-shocked and wounded. At the same time, the losses of the Afghan side are still not known exactly. According to versions of various sources, they are estimated from 670,000 to 2 million people. Moreover, the victims are not divided into soldiers, mujahideen and civilians. Fact number 2. Awards. More than 200,000 soldiers who fought in Afghanistan were awarded state awards. 11,000 were awarded posthumously. The title of Hero of the Soviet Union was awarded to 86 servicemen, 28 of them posthumously. Fact number 3. Prisoners. During the 10 years of the war in Afghanistan, 417 people were captured by the Afghans, of which 130 people were released. The fate of the remaining 287 people is not known. Fact number 4. Loss of equipment. During all the years of the war, 147 tanks, 1,314 BMP, BTR, BMD and BRDM, 433 mortars and guns, 510 engineering vehicles, 118 aircraft, 333 helicopters were lost. Fact number 5. The cost of war. According to Alexander Mayorov, who served as chief military advisor in Afghanistan, the war cost the Soviet Union 1.5 to 2 million rubles a day. This amount included the maintenance of the army and the support of the Kabul government. What facts do you know about the Afghan war? Share in the comments below the video. Fact number 6. The bloodiest battle. In January 1988, one of the bloodiest battles of this war took place in the province of Paktia in Afghanistan, which was later shown in Fyodor Bondarchuk's film The Ninth Company. This battle is also called the Battle at Height 3234. There were about 400 Afghan mujahideen for 40 Soviet paratroopers. The attack lasted 12 hours and ended with the victory of the fighters of the Soviet Union. The bloody battle brought the Soviet army 6 killed and 28 wounded, while the losses of the mujahideen are still unknown. Fact number 7. The withdrawal of troops. The withdrawal of Soviet troops from Afghanistan initially seemed like an admission of defeat, but this was done in order to save the lives of the remaining fighters and stop the huge costs of the war. 3 years later, the PDPA was defeated. Fact number 8. Amnesty. In 1989, the USSR gave an amnesty to all military personnel in Afghanistan, many of whom were in prison because of the crimes they committed. Fact number 9. No control. The personnel of the 40th Army, which was carrying out its international duty in Afghanistan, constantly lacked alcohol. That small amount of alcohol that was sent to the units rarely reached the addressees. However, on holidays the soldiers were always drunk. There is an explanation for this. With a total shortage of alcohol, Soviet military adopted to make moonshine. The authorities forbade doing this legally, so in some part there were specially guarded home brewing points. The headache for homegrown moonshiners was the extraction of sugar containing raw materials. Most often they used trophy sugar seized from the mujahideen. The lack of sugar was compensated for with local honey, which according to the Soviet military was pieces of a dirty yellow color. This product was different from our usual honey, having a disgusting aftertaste. Moonshine turned out to be even more unpleasant on its basis. However, there were no consequences. Veterans admitted that in the Afghan war there were problems with the control of personnel. Cases of systematic drunkenness were often recorded. They say that in the first years of the war many officers abused alcohol. Some of them turned into chronic alcoholics. Some soldiers who had access to medical drugs became addicted to taking painkillers as a way to suppress their uncontrollable feelings of fear. Others who managed to establish contacts with the Pashtuns became addicted to drugs. According to former Special Forces officer Alexei Chikishev, in some units up to 90% of the rank and file smoked charas, an analog of hashish. How reasonable do you think it was for soldiers to drink in such quantities during the war? Leave your comments on this issue under the video. Fact number 10. Doomed to death. Captured Soviet soldiers were rarely killed immediately by the Mujahideen, usually followed by an offer to convert to Islam. In case of refusal, the soldier was actually sentenced to death. Sometimes, as a goodwill gesture, the militants could hand over the prisoner to a human rights organization or exchange him for their fighter, but this is rather an exception to the rule. Almost all Soviet prisoners of war were kept in Pakistani camps. It was impossible to rescue them from there. After all, the USSR did not fight in Afghanistan. The condition of detention of Soviet soldiers were unbearable. Many said that it was better to die from a guard than to endure these torments. Even worse were the tortures, from the mere description of which one becomes uncomfortable. American journalist George Cryle wrote that shortly after the entry of the Soviet contingent into Afghanistan, 5 jute bags appeared near the airstrip. Pushing one of them, the soldier saw blood seep out. After opening the bags, a terrible picture appeared before Soviet military. In each of them there was a young internationalist wrapped in his own skin. Doctors found that the skin was first cut on the stomach and then tied in a knot over the head. The people called the execution Red Tulip. Before the execution, the prisoner was drugged, bringing him to unconsciousness, but the heroine ceased to act long before death. At first, the doomed person experienced a severe pain shock, then he began to go crazy and eventually died in inhuman torment. Fact number 11. They did what they wanted. Local residents were often extremely cruel to the Soviet soldiers internationalists. Veterans recalled with a shudder how the peasants finished off the Soviet wounded with shovels and hoes. Sometimes this gave rise to a ruthless response from the colleagues of the victims. There were cases of completely unjustified cruelty. Corporal of the Airborne Forces Sergei Boyarkin, in the book Soldiers of the Afghan War, described an episode of his battalion patrolling the outskirts of Kandahar. The paratroopers had fun shooting cattle with machine guns until an Afghan pasturing donkey got in their way. Without thinking twice, machine gun burst was fired at the man, and one of the military decided to cut off the victim's ears as a keepsake. Boyarkin also described the favorite habit of some military men to fabricate dirt on the Afghans. During the search, the patrolman quietly pulled out a cartridge from his pocket, pretending that it was found in the things of the Afghan. After presenting such evidence of guilt, a local resident could be shot right on the spot. Viktor Marochkin, who served as a driver in the 70th Brigade, stationed near Kandahar, recalled an incident that occurred in the village of Tarinkot. Previously, the settlement was fired from the Grad and artillery. Local residents, including women and children who ran out of the village in a panic, were finished off from the Shilka by the Soviet military. In total, about 3,000 Pashtuns died here. Fact number 12. Afghan syndrome. On February 15, 1989, the last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan, but the echoes of that merciless war remained. They are commonly called the Afghan syndrome. Many Afghan soldiers, having returned to civilian life, could not find a place in it. Statistics that appeared a year after the withdrawal of Soviet troops showed terrible numbers. About 3,700 war veterans were in prisons. 75% of families of Afghans faced either divorce or escalation of conflicts. Almost 70% of the soldiers internationalists were not satisfied with their work. 60% abused alcohol or drugs. Among the Afghans, there was a high suicide rate. In the early 1990s, a study was conducted that showed that at least 35% of war veterans needed psychological treatment. On this unfortunately sad note, that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. This will give us an incentive to keep making good videos for you. There will be many more interesting things ahead. Thank you for watching and see you again. Narrated by Maxim Nikulin for Newsoldier channel.